You know what's worse than a toddler tantrum? You lying there at 2 a.m. wondering what that weird noise was and then going, I think the baby climbed out of their crib again. And then you're leaping up to save them from whatever disaster they surely have gotten themselves into. And then you're up the rest of the night. And maybe it's happening over and over. So let's talk about when to ditch the crib and when to hang onto it, if you can. Some kids truly can't stay safely in a crib anymore. Some families make a toddler bed work by completely toddler-proofing the room and accepting some middle-of-the-night wake-ups for a while. And others find that making the shift to a toddler bed doesn't minimize the midnight wake-ups. In fact, it unleashes sometimes nightly toddler play sessions, or worse, toddler sleep terrors, which I'll talk about in another video. But this is one of those deceptively simple parenting moments that can turn out to be a lot more complicated once you're there. You might think, well, of course we'll transition to that cute little toddler bed at 2. That's what everyone does. I bought this fancy crib that morphs into a toddler bed. We're not going to miss out on that feature. And then you're waking up at 3 a.m. to find your tiny human standing silently next to your bed staring at you like a horror movie extra, and you're freaked out wondering what havoc they have wreaked on the way from their toddler bed to your bedside. So let's get into it. First, some definitions. What's the difference here between a bed, a big kid bed, and a crib? So of course, a crib is a bed with 4 sides that requires an adult to lift the child in and out. A toddler bed, or any big kid bed, really is just an open bed that the child can climb into and out of safely on their own. Lots of cribs can be kind of reformatted into a toddler bed, like moved onto the ground, one crib side removed, and they're sold like this is a great feature that you should just automatically do at a certain age, like when they're walking or something. But that's not based on child development. That's based on sales and trying to convince you that this crib feature is this great thing, when really it's not necessarily a great thing, and certainly has more to do with your individual child and family and what works best for you, rather than with some preset developmental milestone. And here's a big piece of the larger context that parents often miss. Right now, your toddler is in the middle of a massive developmental explosion. We're talking their speech taking off, their motor skills expanding in leaps and bounds. They're learning so much every day. Emotional skills, lots of emotions. Not a lot of emotional regulation just yet, anyway. But just everything going off all at once. You might also be thinking about potty training at the same time, and also maybe transitioning from a bottle or a sippy cup or a binky, and maybe starting daycare or preschool. And maybe you're welcoming a new baby into the house. There's a ton of change going on. Meanwhile, your toddler's emotions are huge and intense, and they're forming tons of new opinions about everything. They're starting to test boundaries, like crib sides. It's an overwhelming time for them and for us as parents, frankly. And when everything around you feels new and challenging, one of the most reassuring things you can have is a sense of familiarity somewhere that feels safe and comfy, familiar, like your own cozy bed. I can relate to that, right? And there's a misunderstanding I want to clear up right now. Parents sometimes worry in the back of their mind that a crib, like, maybe is it just some kind of baby jail, like some kind of terrible place that bad parents go to drop off and abandon their child? No, not true. Given your child is generally typically developing and healthy and living in a safe, healthy family, babies and toddlers don't associate cribs with being trapped, imprisoned, or abandoned. That's an adult projection. To a toddler, a crib usually feels like a cozy, safe, predictable retreat after a long, exhausting day of learning to walk and run and climbing and falling and navigating big feelings in an overwhelming, big new world. Babies use crib time to babble and experiment with new sounds and words, to process and try to understand all the things they experienced that day, to just sort of daydream and decompress, and of course to sleep and rest. So we want to protect that baby decompression time for as long as we can. Another reason to hold off on that open bed if you can: toddlers up playing in their room in the middle of the night or with free access to your room or the whole house are a recipe for no one getting decent sleep. It's a safety issue and a family sleep issue. You end up sleeping with one eye open. It's too much freedom for little ones who aren't yet developmentally ready for that much freedom. And of course, parents need their own space too. I'm all for responsiveness to our children and nurturing our little ones, but we also need to balance that with nurturing ourselves and our relationships, because chronic sleep deprivation and zero alone time is a fast track to burnout, resentment, and losing that sense of connection with your partner. And you falling apart from lack of sleep makes it much harder for you to be there for your child. Even babies and toddlers can subconsciously absorb this fact. Parents have their own space. Baby has their own space. It's healthy for everyone. I also want to say this has to do with your child's temperament as well. Some kiddos naturally do really well with change, and it's no big deal to shift out of the crib. But other kiddos don't do well with change. They need time and reassurance. Maybe they're on the shy side, or they have sensory sensitivities that make change difficult. Or maybe you've got a little tornado on your hands who is literally bouncing out of the crib, and so you need to transition them into a safer sleep situation immediately. I am a huge believer in customizing your parenting decisions based on the unique little personality and temperament of your kiddo. This is an issue throughout toddlerhood and indeed throughout all of parenting. Potty training, which you're also probably working on, is the perfect example of how your toddler's personality should drive the process, not some one-size-fits-all potty training checklist or parenting checklist. If you want to know more, enroll in my on-demand video course that helps you decode your toddler's potty personality and teaches you the best approach based on their potty personality. And spoiler, their potty personality applies to far more than just potty training. It's the foundation for how you make all your parenting decisions going forward and helps lay the foundation of a strong, healthy, and secure attachment with your child all the way through. So join me on that. Check out the link in the description. Another thing, this very toddlerish drama around cribs isn't just about when and how to transition them out of their crib. It's also about how they internalize the boundary associated with the crib. This is a little complex here, but they test the boundary and they don't necessarily want to break the boundary. Don't assume that just because your toddler tested the nighttime limits by climbing out of their crib one night that they actually want to be out of their crib. It's one of the kooky, illogical paradoxes of your toddler's fascinating mind and mental process. So even if they test the crib rails and they try to escape, maybe they don't actually want to get out. See, that's the toddler mindset in a nutshell. They simultaneously want to test that boundary, but they might not necessarily want to live with the outcome. Like, hey, I can climb out of my crib, but wait a second, how come I'm not in my cozy crib anymore? Ah! Sort of backwards example of this happened with one of my kiddos. Some toddlers assume that because a parent needed to lift them out of the crib, an adult is also needed to get them out of their open bed too. One of my babies had to be moved out of her crib because she was just too tall for her crib, and we saw her trying to climb out one day and decided she needs more room. So we put her on a twin mattress. We just sat on the floor in the same spot in her room, but she would still call to us from her bed to ask us to get her out of her bed, just like when she used to when she was in her full crib. We started to realize she doesn't get it, that she can actually get herself off this mattress onto the floor. She's internalized that for her whole life, an adult has to get her up from sleep. She literally didn't realize she could just get off the bed herself for several weeks. So what's going on inside that cute little head? It wasn't the crib side keeping her contained in the crib. It was actually her own mind. The boundary we had physically set up for her by placing her in a crib, which she then internalized in her own mind, her own learning and experience. She internalized the physical boundary of the crib rails that told her she's safe and cozy in there, that staying in bed within the boundaries we had set felt safer to her. Now, of course, she eventually tested that boundary, as toddlers do. She tried and succeeded at getting out of her own bed. You know, that's what they do. So she learned that boundary was flexible. But she still internalized that sense of safety and coziness she associated with her safe little contained crib. It's a perfect metaphor for setting boundaries with our little ones. Some people think and worry that boundaries sounds mean or harsh or the opposite of gentle. Boundaries aren't meant to be punishing. They're literally meant to be boundaries, limits. Boundaries and limits show a child where they're safe and where they're not safe. Boundaries are containing, psychologically containing, as well as physically containing. We feel safe if we have a sense of containment. Having no limits feels open and scary, like anything could happen, like the feeling of standing on the edge of a cliff that has no railing. That's scary, right? Your child has internalized, if you stay within this boundary, you're safe. And you can see how that physical boundary, the physical safety of the crib rail, is internalized in your baby's mind to create a sense of internal safety based on rules and structure that you, as a parent, have set. Containment. And toddlers actually crave that. Their minds are blowing up with new skills and concepts every single day, new experiences, and having a familiar, safe sleep environment helps them feel grounded and contained when it's time to power down. That's why I generally recommend holding off on big changes like transitioning out of the crib unless and until it's absolutely necessary. Like, pace yourself on these changes, okay? Do they really have to all happen at the same time? Potty training and crib and preschool and binky and so much else. I see parents trying to change all at the same time with their toddler. If you don't have to make a major change during this sensitive developmental stretch, don't. Keep some consistency in their little world while everything else is shifting and changing so quickly. And I know you want to know what exact age should you transition your child out of the crib, but there's no magic age for making the change. Sorry, I know you were hoping for a tidy number, but in general, it happens sometime between 18 and 36 months, or even later for some kiddos if you're lucky, with the later end of that range being a better bet for most families. Because this isn't about the calendar, it's about your child's maturity, their temperament, their developmental readiness, and importantly, what works for your family's sleep habits and the safety issues in your house in regards to your toddler. Not what your neighbor's baby did, or your sister's baby, or even your older baby. It's about your unique little person and your unique little family. Now, if your toddler's already starting to jailbreak the crib and you want to keep them in before you haul out the toddler bed, try these tricks. You can try a well-fitting toddler sleep sack, and the bonus move, putting it on backwards so they can't unzip it. The sleep sack makes it difficult for them to throw one leg over the crib side, so you can try that. Some families have luck turning the crib, so sometimes there's a higher side. Turn the higher side so it faces out into the room. It sort of makes it like a visual trick that makes it look harder to climb out and visually discourages climbing for some toddlers. Or lower the crib mattress all the way to the lowest rung. Some cribs safely allow this. Just make sure there aren't any gaps, obviously, that it's safe. And certainly rearrange the room to reduce temptation. You want to remove climbable furniture. You want to remove distractions so it's not so interesting and tempting to climb out. And if none of that works and they're truly not safe in the crib anymore, then it's time for plan B, which is moving them into a toddler bed or an open bed of some kind. And when you do make the switch, remember, your toddler's bedroom now needs to function like a giant crib. That means a safe baby gate at the door. Treat it like the new crib side. You want to secure and remove any climbable furniture. You probably secured it already, but go ahead and double check, that everything is anchored to the wall. Do all the safety things that I know you already know, but just double check. Remove the hazards like cords, window blinds, strings, small choking hazards, because they're going to be maybe rattling around in there in the middle of the night on their own. Make sure it's a safe, calm, predictable sleep environment. Many parents minimize toys and distractions, in order to make it less appealing for your child to be roaming around the room at 2 a.m. Many of them don't do that, but some of them do. So finally, don't let social media trends, well-meaning relatives, or random parenting clips pressure you into making this switch before your kid or you are ready. A crib isn't a baby jail. It's a cozy, secure retreat that helps your toddler feel safe and contained and sleep better. And when the time is right, do it thoughtfully, safely, and in a way that makes sense for your unique little family. And this is where it gets personal. Every family's situation is unique. If you're struggling with this, as I know many of you are, as I did, drop a comment below or book a one-to-one consultation with me at babyshrink.com, where I set aside time every week for last-minute parent consultations, because I know lots of you are desperate out there and need some help thinking through this or another parenting situation now. And I'm here for you. Thanks for hanging out with me today. And now go get some sleep. I hope you can. You've earned it.